Listen, y'all, I've said it once, and I'm gonna say it again. The Democrats need to stop pushing away Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang, because those are the only candidates who are capable of defeating Donald Trump in the 2020 election by a landslide. Joe Biden, if he wins, it will be by an extremely slim margin. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren may not win at all. Trump would most likely beat Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. But Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang, they appeal to moderates, they appeal to centrists, and they appeal to a number of conservatives as well as libertarians, while they also maintain their progressive viewpoints. They're in favor of gun control. They're in favor of, some sort of Medicare for all thing, right? So they still have their progressive ideologies. They're not Republicans. They're not going to, they're not going to do the Republican things. They are progressives, but they appeal to moderates, to conservatives, to independents, and independents are 40% of Americans now identify as politically independent rather than Democrat or Republican. In order to win an election, you need votes from at least half, if not more than half of those independents. Because if you don't, you most likely won't have enough votes in order to win. Now, granted, the Democrats have a bit of an advantage because there are more registered Democrats across the country than there are registered Republicans, but it's only by like 5 or 6 million. It's not a very large margin. It's a very small portion. That, and while Republicans and conservatives tend to vote more liberal, progressive individuals, especially young ones, have a tendency not to vote. So that gives an additional advantage to the Republicans. Another thing that gives an advantage to the Republicans is nominating someone who self-identifies as a socialist to your party. Now listen, as a person, I've got a ton of respect for Bernie Sanders. In terms of social policies, no one has been more incredibly advocative, in favor of civil liberties for decades now than Bernie Sanders, right? So I have a lot of respect for him in that sense. Where I don't have respect for him is in his plans, because his plans, like his economic policies specifically, would cost American taxpayers hundreds of billions or perhaps trillions of dollars annually. The United States is already more than $23 trillion in debt. We simply cannot afford, even if we tax the ultra wealthy even more than they're already being burdened. We still wouldn't be able to afford it. Oh, wow, I've got a bit of a double chin going. I think I need to lose some weight. Sorry. Anyway, speaking of taxes, a lot of them say the rich need to pay their fair share. That doesn't appeal very well to independents or moderates either. The reason it doesn't is because the top 10% of all earners in the United States already pay more than 50% of all federal taxes. The top 50% of all American taxpayers or American earners pay more than 90% of all federal income taxes. So the wealthy are already taxed more than enough. So taxing the wealthy more is not a righteous cause. It's just, and it's going to be burdensome on consumers as well as on employees. Because the more you tax the wealthy, that's sort of, when you tax the ultra rich, when you tax corporations, that trickles down, right? So you tax someone, you tax a corporation, say $100 million. That is enough to pay the salary of like 10,000 employees. So chances are you either lay off or you reduce wages for, or you so many workers, or you just don't hire as many workers as a result of that. So unemployment remains the same or it goes up as a result. Another thing that could happen is prices go up. Now, that usually isn't the case for large corporations, but if corporations want to continue to pay their employees a fair wage, if corporations want to continue hiring more employees in general, they may need to raise their prices in order to balance the costs. And the notion that business owners, that corporation CEOs are just lazy boneheads sitting on their asses doing nothing all day, that's bullshit. Corporate CEOs probably do more work in 1 hour than you can do in a number of days. They work their asses off for their employees. They work their asses off for their company, because if they don't, there's a good chance that their company could fail. And of course, I think we should reward them with, if anything, lower their taxes. I'm not saying provide them a tax, I'm not saying we should subsidize them the way we do now, because that gives them an unfair advantage over other businesses. I am saying we should reward them for... The reason I say we should reward them by cutting their taxes is because they're providing millions of jobs. They're providing millions of people with a product that they enjoy, that they would not be able to have otherwise. And they are contributing billions of dollars to the economy. Right? So we should reward billionaires with lower taxes. We should reward them with, because when you lower taxes for billionaires, you incentivize more people to become billionaires. And how do you become a billionaire in a society with very little regulation? Of course, when there's more regulation, it's easier for ultra wealthy people to accumulate wealth easier, because there's less competition. And same goes for if we cut off trade to, say, Mexico and Canada, so that there's fewer, so that supply in the United States goes artificially down. These are things that big pharma companies have lobbied for successfully, and those are a few reasons why big medicine prices are so high. It doesn't so much have to do with the market as much as it has to do with the crony market. The fact that the market has been manipulated by lobbyists and by government officials. But anyway, this began originally as a rant about Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang, so I should continue to go on about that. Basically, because more than 40% of Americans identify as independent, because more than 60% of Democrats do not and will not identify as socialist, that the Democrats should nominate someone like Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang if they hope to win the election in 2020. If they do not nominate such an individual, there's a very high chance that Donald Trump will win re-election. And another thing about the impeachment, right? Whether or not it was justified is another story altogether, but the fact is, you guys are losing huge amounts of support in swing states because of this. So it's backfiring. Not only that, but it's effectively useless. Even if a trial happens in the Senate, it's controlled by the Republicans. There's no chance that you could kick Donald Trump out of office no matter what you do. So the trial can happen. He's still going to stay in office. He's going to serve his full term, and he'll probably be re-elected because you guys are playing a game rather than focusing on what matters. Now, I know I'm not a Democrat, so why should Democrats be taking my advice? Because if you don't take my advice, you will lose. Trump 2020.